Hello and welcome to another standard video here on the official MTG Arena channel. Today we are revisiting the black-white bats archetype, which has received a huge upgrade with the release of Avatar, thanks to Momo Friendly Flyer. This 1-mana, 1/1 legendary lemur bat ally has flying, says the first non-lemur creature spell with flying we cast during each of our turns costs 1 mana less to cast, and whenever another creature we control with flying enters, Momo also gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So a turn 1 Momo can set up some very explosive starts, allowing us to maybe double spell on turn 2, or maybe even cast a 3-drop on turn 2 already, which can definitely pull us ahead. And one of the big payoffs for having lots of bats in this deck is with Zorlin Cosmos Caller, which we could already play on turn 2 thanks to Momo, a 3/3 legendary bat cleric with flying and vigilance, saying whenever a bat we control attacks, we gain 1 life, and as we'll see later, those life gain triggers have a lot of payoffs in this deck as well. And when Zorlin enters or attacks, we can also pay 2 mana and 2 life to return a non-land permanent card with mana value 3 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter, so that also gives the deck a bit of a graveyard recursion. But Zorlin is especially powerful when paired with the Starscape Cleric, which is a 2/1 flying bat that cannot block, and whenever we gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. So especially paired with those individual Zorlin life gain triggers, the Cleric can very quickly diminish the opponent's life total. We have some other lifelink creatures throughout as well, and other ways to gain life, so the damage can very quickly add up, and the Cleric also has Offspring, so for an additional 3 mana, normally we get to make an additional 1/1 token version, which is almost as good as the original, and especially with a discount from Momo, it becomes a lot more realistic to cast the Cleric with Offspring for just 4 mana total. And then we've got another Offspring bat with a Darkstar Augur, which will provide the deck with additional card advantage, as this 2/3 flyer says at the beginning of our upkeep, we get to reveal the top card of our library, put it into our hand, and we also lose life equal to its mana value, so kind of like a Dark Confident card draw ability. And this one also has Offspring for just a single black mana to make an extra 1/1 version, so once again a card we can potentially play on turn 2 thanks to Momo, or Offspring for just 3 mana total. And then rounding out the deck, we've got some more life-linking bats at 1 mana with a Rune Lurker bat, just a 1/1 flying lifelink, can maybe scry 1 end of turn if we ended up descending. And then at 2 mana, there's the Deep Cavern bat, which offers another angle of attack by offering the deck a bit of hand disruption as well, so we can have a look at the opponent's hand and exile a non-land card until the bat leaves the battlefield. And then a 1/1 flying lifelink is still very useful, so the bat can also potentially be recurred with Zorlin if it does get removed, since it's usually the target of the opponent's first removal spell. And then another nice payoff for getting lots of small individual life gain triggers is the Essence Channeler, which is a 2/1. This one does not have built-in flying, but can gain flying and vigilance as long as we've lost a life this turn, which we can maybe enable with some of our lands or with a Darkstar Augur. And whenever we gain life, we can also put a +1/+1 counter on it. If it were to die, we can also move its counters onto another creature we control, especially powerful if we can move it onto a flying lifelinker, since that can easily help win the race. And then finally rounding out the deck, we have 2 non-bat creatures with the Exemplar of Light as another source of card advantage, and much like the Essence Channeler, it also grows whenever we gain life by picking up additional +1 counters. And then to further amplify these life gain synergies, we also have 2 copies of Case of the Uneaten Feast, which will gain a life whenever a creature enters under our control. Can also maybe solve the case to help recur creatures out of the graveyard. And then the last missing piece is a bit of removal, since we have our graveyard recursion, card draw, hand disruption, so we really just need a good removal spell, and Shelter by Ghosts is one of the most powerful ones you can play, especially in a best-of-1 format where you're maybe less likely to get punished for running the aura. And then this can also give our creature lifelink in addition to exiling an opposing non-land permanent, so it can also be very swingy, and it's even a card we can get back out of the graveyard with Zorlin, so that's another neat synergy to keep in mind. And then the mana base has some pretty good mana fixing in black-white with lots of dual lands, which will make sure we can cast our spells in a timely manner. Cavern of Souls naming Bat can also make them uncounterable, so it can be very useful against control strategies. Then we've got plenty of basics, and then another new addition from Avatar is the Abandoned Air Temple, which is another excellent mana sink, especially if we have a nice board presence, and can now pay 4 mana, tap it, and put a +1 counter on each creature we control. And then we've got plenty of basic lands, so it will enter untapped as well. And then the Mudflat Village can also potentially be sacrificed to return a bat from our graveyard back to our hand for those long grindy games. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw with Momo, although awkwardly no black mana to cast a Deep Cavern Bat, and we're not really taking full advantage of the discount either, since I don't have any of my Offspring or more expensive bats. So I think this is a mulligan. This is better. This hand would have loved Momo. For now, can curve Ruin Lurker into Deep Cavern or Ruin Lurker into Channeler. Could get rid of Exemplar, but I feel like Exemplar is going to be pretty important later. So I could also get rid of Essence Channeler, keep the two Lifelinkers, and then as long as one of them survives, Exemplar can start drawing. Let's try that approach. Alright, we drew Momo after all. So yeah, play Momo turn 1. Could have still gone for Ruin Lurker and then next turn gone Momo plus Deep Cavern, but this is a fine sequence as well. So I can play Deep Cavern. Opponent could have a counterspell, I suppose. But I think it's still the one I want to play first, because yeah, if I play Ruin Lurker, then the discount goes to waste. And I can maybe wait to Offspring this one. Deep Cavern resolves. See what they're working with. Starcage is going to be an issue with this hand. Although they still have a pretty strong hand regardless, with all the different 3-drops out of the Synthesizer deck. But yeah, Starcage probably still the pick. Next turn they can snare, exile Deep Cavern Bat, get Starcage back. But then I can deploy Exemplar on the cheap. So that seems fine. And if they go for Synthesizer, we can maybe outrace them in the air. They're also still missing double white, so they may not be able to cast Starcage. But don't want to count on that. Right, opponent does go for Synthesizer first. Bottom. Draw Channeler. Channeler does not have built-in flying, so does not get a discount, but Exemplar certainly does here. So I can play it and immediately draw a card. Now they might prioritize Exemplar with the Perilous Snare, but in the meantime we're getting good damage in. So there's the Snare. Okay, so now Cleric, 1 mana away from casting with Offspring. I can Offspring the Darkstar Augur, however, so that seems good. Pump Momo twice. They have a second white. Do they have a Starcage? A Bricks? Bricks can turn into Starcage with a Repurposing Bay, but that'll have to wait a turn. For now, make another Construct token. Can take 6. Opponent's at 10, so they seem pretty dead here. Especially if I can draw a land for an Offspringed Cleric. We cannot. Although Zoralin is still pretty good here. Would be better with a Cleric in play, admittedly. So what if I just play Cleric for 1 mana? That still seems pretty solid. Can even go Case into Cleric, into Ruin Lurker Bat. Maximize our life gain triggers. Yeah, Momo did a lot of work this game. There we go. Even have some more Cleric triggers coming up. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a somewhat slow but powerful hand. Zoralin great in conjunction with the Exemplar. Would love to draw Momo, because I would be able to play Momo plus Cleric on turn 2 with a discount. So then we wouldn't miss a beat. For now, tapped Godless Shrine. Opponent on a green deck with turn 1 Recruit. Alright, Cleric it is. And then if they play Badger Mole Cub next turn, at least I'll have an answer lined up. These green decks typically don't have a ton of removal. Can't let them untap with the Cub, it's too dangerous. There's an argument for holding Sheltered by Ghosts to exile an Ouroboros, which I could also get behind. But I'm just hoping to get ahead in the air in the meantime. Next turn I could play an Exemplar, immediately draw a card. It's gonna be a World Wagon. Gets an extra land. Okay. Augure's also tempting, but Exemplar both draws right away and gets bigger. So I think I still prefer it here. But maybe next turn I'll deploy the Augur, or Zoralin can also help grow the Exemplar even more. Opponent's at 12. And there's a second Cub. So still 4 mana available. Llanowar Elves is still acceptable. And a Bramble Familiar, so yeah, their last card's gonna be pretty good. But they have all the mana they'll need. And not gonna trade for a World Wagon. Okay. So I think going Channeler plus Zoralin is probably the way to go here. Just to maximize our board presence and life gain triggers. Opponent's at 3. Have a bit of toughness back, although I don't know if it's going to be enough if our opponent casts a Craterhoof Behemoth here. Yeah. Now what they could have considered is crewing the World Wagon with a Craterhoof trigger on the stack. Right now we're getting attacked for 30 damage, so yeah, even with 6 toughness that's not going to be enough. So it didn't really matter. I guess there's another Cub attacking me too. Yeah, plenty of damage to spare. And there we go, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a functional hand. Turn 1 Momo is always exciting. Can play a 1-mana Cleric on the following turn. But especially when it comes to casting our creatures with Offspring, it becomes much more realistic. Could also Sheltered by Ghosts if our opponent presents a target. Black-white as well. And Inquisitor. That's fine, I'll just pick a land, I think. Could also go for Cleric, let's see. Costs 1 more to cast, so kind of balances out with a discount. Unless they also have removal. Alright, fair enough. Play a 2-mana Cleric then. So this is maybe some sort of pixie deck that's going to keep bouncing their own things over and over. Unstoppable Slasher probably has to go. So that leaves one option. And hope they can't remove the Cleric too easily. Ideally draw another black source so we can Offspring the Augur. And Delny is acceptable. Alright, it's going to be Augur without Offspring, sadly. Still want the extra cards. I can see the synergy with Delny and Slasher becoming unblockable. 2 cards in hand. They maybe have their own Sheltered by Ghosts. Just a Voice of Victory. Mobilize also quite synergistic with Delny. Alright, so I drew a free lane thanks to the Augur. Now I could play one with Offspring. I could also activate the Air Temple. This goes to 4, this goes to 3, so that's 7 plus 1 from the triggers 8. So we're getting close to lethal, but I think I still prefer either going for Offspring here or here. I guess here it's 6 mana because of the Inquisitor tax. Yeah, we'll go with Augur then. And not too concerned about losing a bunch of life next turn. So yeah. Happy that they did not have an answer to the Sheltered by Ghosts, since that card has been taking over the game, as it so often does. Possible they have a way to pump their team. This seems safe enough. Alright, Archenemy Charm for lifelink. Can they survive an incoming attack? They're at 10. Can play a Cleric with Offspring as well. Or we can activate Air Temple. Another Sheltered by Ghosts isn't bad either. And the opponent, upon seeing Sheltered by Ghosts, is gonna throw in the towel onto the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a functional hand. Just need to hopefully draw a few more creatures here. Case into Channeler. Can either play Augur or a way to cast it with Offspring. Opponent on maybe a blue artifact deck. Could also be Kona combo with the station lands to immediately enable survival. So then finding a discard spell would be ideal. And yeah, Dragonstorm points towards the Kona deck. So Deep Cavern Bat is our best friend here. And there it is. Ask and you shall receive. Our opponent did have Kona in hand, although they also have Unauthorized Exit to bounce my Deep Cavern Bat, stock up to refuel. So it's not going to be easy, but I think we still take Kona, since that's the actual problem card. Could try and take Omniscience, but Kona putting in River Region to bounce my stuff is also not great. And we get to apply a bit of pressure with a Channeler. But yeah, opponent can either bounce the Bat even end of turn to still set up Kona into Omniscience, or they can stock up. So now I can maybe draw another Deep Cavern Bat, or I can hope that the opponent doesn't find a second Kona. Alright, I'm just gonna go for Augur here. Did they draw Kona? If so, we're in trouble. Yep. So they get to station with Uthros. Put in free Omniscience. And from here it's unlikely that they'll fizzle out. At the very least they can cast a River Regent. So yeah, it's not looking good. Their actual win condition usually involves some combination of Dragonstorms with the River Regents, sometimes bouncing each other while picking up the Dragonstorm. And then they can keep going. For now they bounce Augur. They still have the exit they can cast. So yeah, we should be pretty dead here. So yeah, I mean, we had the bats. Turns out we needed 2 of them, or we needed to hope that they didn't have a way to immediately tap down Kona to station and survival. They've got a backup Kona in hand, the battleship wiping our board, and the second region now should lock it up. So they could keep bouncing battleship to destroy all of my lands as well. So they don't really need a separate win condition. There's a battleship. Play another regent. Replay your battleship. So yeah, when the Kona deck actually draws Kona on turn 4, it's incredibly scary, especially with Omniscience. So they kind of had it all here. And Lost in the Maze also a neat way to protect a tapped Kona by giving it hexproof. So that can protect against instant speed removal. And without any lands, it's going to be difficult to play Magic. So again, with double Regent and Dragonstorm, they can draw through the entire deck, but I think our opponent's probably done now. With triple Regent, they can close out the game in a couple attacks. I'll replay my case. Opponent wants to counter it, fair enough. So that's not quite lethal here, but close enough. Opponent's going to destroy our land. And at long last, we get to play Momo. Can't counter this one. Alright, GG's. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a functional hand. Cleric is quite powerful with Zoralin gaining us more life if our bats get to attack. So this is definitely a more aggressive hand. Opponent on a green deck, so they might be ramping something out. And yep, Badger Mole Cub. Seeing a lot of plain standard these days. Okay, I'll go ahead and play Cleric, attack. And then hope to outrace them in the air. If they can cast a turn 3 Ouroboros, that might be tough, since we do not have an answer. It's gonna be a Wild Guide with Offspring. So our opponent's setting up even more mana. Well, I'll go for Zoralin, I think, over Augur. Next turn I could play Exemplar if I need more card draw. But for now, Zoralin's going to amplify our damage with a Cleric. Could also play Augur with Offspring. Both are reasonable. Do have to watch out for Craterhoof Behemoth, which can win the game out of nowhere. And yeah, opponent milled one already. Don't know if it's quite lethal here, since we're at 24. They have 3 attackers. Opponent ended up going for Ouroboros. So yeah. Shows how powerful the 4-drop is when they choose it over the 8 mana card. They can still cast a familiar. And goes for Wild Guide instead. Maybe they already have a Craterhoof Behemoth in hand, and then next turn with Ouroboros it's going to be extra lethal. Can I somehow deal 12 damage here? It's going to be tough. So, can only really cast one creature here. The most damage this turn would be with Starscape Cleric. I attack. I get 3 triggers, so with double Cleric that's 6, plus another 6, yeah, that should be Exaxes. So the aggressive line ended up working out. Opponent was just a turn behind. Yeah, super close game, since I imagine they had the Craterhoof for lethal next turn. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw. We have a functional draw. I'll take a Momo off the top, otherwise bat into Cleric. Into Zorlin. Opponent graveyard deck with Town Greeter. They didn't mill anything too scary yet, but that can quickly change. So, play Cleric. Possible they have a Steam Core Scholar, which can get in the way of our flyers. Awaken can destroy the Cleric now. Can eventually get it back with Zorlin. Sheltered by Ghosts could also exile Awaken before they mill. I think I still go for Zorlin here to be more mana efficient, and then next turn I can potentially pay for Zorlin's ability and Sheltered by Ghosts. Alright, opponent did end up milling Kivero. Passes back, and we draw Momo. Not super helpful this turn, since I think I'm still going for the line I described. Although, possible our opponents got Bitter Triumph in hand that they're going to use on Zorlin as soon as I attack. So I'm hesitant to play Sheltered by Ghosts before attacking. So let's maybe just start there, although it would mean missing out on a bit of damage from the lifelink and the Cleric trigger. But yeah, it would be a bit of a blowout if they have the Bitter Triumph in hand. I think I gotta try it since I need to really maximize my damage output. That seems to work. And then Exile Awaken would be a blowout if they can remove Zorlin later, but don't want them getting back Kivero if they didn't have one in hand already. And then I get to attack, pay 2 mana, 3 life. And Cleric sees the Zorlin trigger. So our opponent's at 6. Falls to 4 and concedes. Alright, I'll take it. So we get to rank up here. Let's see if we can get another game with turn 1 Momo. Okay, we're on the draw with turn 1 Momo. Could use another 2 mana bat to follow up, but I can always play Augur without Offspring on turn 2. So that's going to be good enough. Turn 1 Plains into Survivor from our opponent. Alright, now I could Deep Cavern. In fact, I could go turn 1 Case, turn 2 Momo plus Deep Cavern. If we want to play around an opposing Sheltered by Ghosts on the Survivor. Which I don't hate, because I would prefer playing Darkstar with Offspring anyway. It's going to be the Aerialist next. Could become an issue once it's modified. Alright, so Momo into Deep Cavern, and then next turn I'll be able to Offspring Augur, assuming Momo survives. Take the opponent's... Yeah, they have both Sheltered by Ghosts and Seam Rip. I mean, Sheltered by Ghosts is still the bigger problem. Next turn they would just Seam Rip the Deep Cavern Bat to get their Sheltered back, but then I can play Augur in the meantime, so that still seems better to me. Or I can leave them with the Sheltered. They probably Shelter the Bat, and maybe also get rid of Momo. It's a tough call to make, actually, because if they draw land, they can cast both regardless. Well, I'll still take the Shelter by Ghosts. It's gonna be a Scavenger into Seam Rip, presumably. So our opponent is definitely ahead on board. We just need to try and play the card advantage game. Another Deep Cavern Bat is interesting. So now I could Sheltered by Ghosts on Momo, play Deep Cavern twice basically, get rid of Sheltered and their armor. Yeah, I think I go for it. And then next turn I can Augur. The board's going to be a bit more under control. I get to gain 4. Case is solved, which could also come in handy. Just gotta hope they don't top deck more removal. Aerialist is fine. Scavenger, Survivor attack. Sure. Channeler's not bad either. So, Augur with Offspring is 3 mana total. Doesn't really leave much of anything, but I think I still prefer it over Channeler into Augur, which is another option. Because then if they do draw an answer to Augur, I won't have a source of card advantage anymore. Now I could offer the trade Momo for Aerialist. I don't think that's worth it, because they would get their Seam Rip back, which can then in turn get rid of Bat, which unlocks Sheltered by Ghost, get a bunch of triggers from Scavenger. Even though I do have this Case of the Uneaten Feast that I would prefer using in my own turn before they can exile stuff with Survivor. Keep Guard's fine. Alright, take my turn. A leveraged Augur. Very much possible that they have Shard Mage's Rescue in hand, but no, opponent does not want to stick around. Yeah, Augur's just gonna take over here. So yeah, that early Momo definitely did a lot of work, allowing us to play some 1-mana Deep Cavern Bats before the opponent was able to deploy the rest of their hand. So definitely proving its worth in this archetype, which hasn't changed a whole lot since Bloomburrow, but every now and then we do get some small upgrades, and Momo is a pretty big one, so definitely recommend trying it out if you want to try the archetype. But for now, I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.